Okay, I'll speak to you soon. So today we're going to have some questions and hopefully some specific answers for you. The answers can be given in many different ways, and I will do my best to make them both applicable to the one asking the question, also to the group as a whole, but also relative to the series of talks that have just been given. You may ask your own question, or you may ask the host to ask the question for you. But if you do have a question, can you please let the host know, and they will come to you when it is your turn to ask. Perhaps we'll have 2 questions, and then we will do the healing list of names. So, let us begin. So, Mirabai, do we have our first question, please?
Yes, one came from Amanda Kay. She says, "Hi Ignatius, can you provide a short review on best practices in cleansing and clearing?"
Do you mean cleansing and clearing of the mind, I presume?
Yeah, let's go with that.
All right. Now, there is a common misconception in the physical world about the way that the process of this form of mediumship works. This is to answer the question. It is often said that the process is one sits and waits in silence for another spiritual being to arrive, and then the personality to take control of whoever the medium is, and then give the knowledge, for example, or provide the energy to flow through. Now, this is a misconception because the spirit is always here. So there is no arrival and no departure. So spirit always being here, the only part of the process is whoever is the medium for either the energy or for the knowledge has to wake up to the presence of spirit. So when one wakes up to the presence, one then can allow. So spiritual work is much the same. Spirit and your spiritual life or spiritual essence is always in attendance. And as you undertake spiritual work, you thin the veil between the two sides. So the veil, if you are not doing the work, let us say, is quite thick and strong. And from the physical world to the spiritual world, you cannot see through this veil. As the physical world undertakes the spiritual life and various practices, then that veil becomes thinner. And eventually, holes in the veil will appear. And the physical world then would get more perception of spiritual world or spirit world being available. So the cleansing then is for the physical side and clearly not for the spiritual side. The cleansing of mind is to see what is always there that perhaps without the work one would never have seen. So as you sit, you allow and you focus correctly. So if spirit is always in attendance and one is striving for it, one needs to do 2 parts, and that is to thin the veil and to look in the correct position. And the correct position in this case would be to a personality or to wisdom that is beyond that veil. Now, as you undertake a practice of meditation, the same is being applied. One turns their attention away from the physical world and then away from the mental world, perhaps away from the emotional world towards the inner world, and the inner world is where the correct viewing or looking for spirit or looking for essence should take place. These are, in parts, the various veils, if you would like to work through one analogy, which is 5 veils, and another which is only 1. But you work through whichever belief system you have, and you then find what is already there. Now, the veil only exists from the physical world to the spiritual world. It does not exist from spiritual world into physical world. It is the human side that puts the block or does not look correctly. It is not the spiritual side. So from spirit world, there is no block, there is no hindrance. But we are aware that the physical side has a blockage that they cannot see through. But we don't see that blockage, but we are aware of it. So we see the hindrance, but that is not an issue to us. So hence, in some of the talks, I have given the instruction or comment that spirit will always get their way. So the flow will happen quite naturally. So, what is the process that you should run for the cleansing or making a hole in your veil? The first is to look inwards and take some responsibility of looking inwards. And this, of course, was addressed in our very first talk on this subject, which was about spiritual bypassing. Not pretending to be spiritual, saying all the right words of a spiritual being, but having no meaning to them, rather taking the process and actually looking inwards and seeing what is occurring. Now, there was a lady in one of the talks that I gave who asked a question, and her answer was, for her, quite applicable, and it perhaps sounds a little clever. Yet it does give a nice flow to the way both the connection happens and the corresponding life being lived. Let me give you that phrase. It was, life is not what you think it is. Life is what you think it is. Now, of course, this sounds like a contradiction, but when you understand it, it is perfectly aligned. It is, life isn't working the way you think it is working, it is actually working from you, and your inner world is reflecting your outer world. Or the other way around. The outer world is reflecting your inner world. So, again, the process is stepping out and away from the physical, mental and emotional world, looking inwards, finding the point of either peace or stillness. Some people imagine a little flame. The truth is, it is an open doorway. An openness. This is what gives the feeling of emptiness, or the feeling of no self, or a feeling that there is no person that is inhabiting this inner space of you. And of course is the empty veil, or the open veil. And the open veil then allows a personality to stand forward. So the process of cleansing is a process of looking in the correct position, keep looking, focusing on the white paper and not on the words on the paper. And then that gives the correct alignment. It does require a process or practice of concentration. So just recognizing, in our analogy, the white piece of paper rather than the writing is a wonderful start, but one needs to keep their attention on the white piece of paper, or the hole in the veil. And as you focus on something, then it grows and expands, and the hole in the veil then starts to get bigger and wider. And it will reveal what is beyond the veil. As I said, the initial feeling is there is emptiness, there is nothing, there is a void, but that void, once you look a little deeper into it, is in fact full. And the void is full of all the spiritual aspects, qualities that are sitting waiting for you. So meditation, correct looking, focusing on the right part, concentrating, these are all parts of that process. And they must begin by one anchoring themselves in the true self. As one gets a little more practiced, one can start then to go beyond the mind and heart far quicker than perhaps one did in the early days. And it becomes more natural and more instinctive. Now, you do not know what the emptiness will deliver to you. And you do not need to know. The knowing will get in the way. So the common question of what is my mission, what is my purpose, should I be a healer, a medium, or something else, can be a hindrance at this stage. One should be open with a loving heart and a clear mind. And then what flows through that veil or hole in the veil then is of no concern to the physical world. And they should just hold the veil open and allow. So if you are, let us say, someone that works within the healing profession, one holds the veil open and allows the energy to flow through. The energy of healing, for example. It flows through the veil, and the job of the medium then is to open that veil and keep it open. Have no concern about what is happening after that. If one is practicing mediumship, then it's the same process. One opens, but this time one is looking through the veil and seeing what's there or what is to be told, and then passes that message onwards. Now, if you are interested in becoming one with spirit and realizing your true nature, your process is very slightly different. The first two are a modality of expression. This one is now locating yourself beyond the veil. So here, then, the medium, if we can call them that now, will open the veil, allow what is to flow, but will step through the veil and realize they are the open space itself. And in being the open space, the flow will go through you. Hence, then, people feel like it is a flow of energy, a flow of knowledge, a flow of love. In time, one realizes another stage deeper, and that deeper stage is realizing you are the love that is allowed to flow through that open veil and not just the open veil. So then we have three parts of this process. One is using the knowledge that flows through, or the healing energy, and thinking you are in the physical world. One is undertaking the process of being the open veil, the hole in the veil. And then the deeper process is realizing that you are the love that flows through the veil. And there is a stage deeper than that too. We don't need to talk about that in line with this question. So the simple practices of allowing spirit or allowing your inspiration or allowing your guidance to be in your life reinforces that flow, that connection. So concentration, but now we have practice. And the practice can be as simple as working with the energy that flows through or the knowledge that flows through, the practice of being open, the practice of being the love in the life of the individual. So depending where you are in your spiritual evolution, the answer becomes slightly different. But there is one core process that should be understood, and that is nothing arrives and nothing leaves. Not when it is true spiritual quality. If it is a physical quality, it will come and it will go. So the clouds will pass by the sky. The mood you are in will be different in the morning to the evening. All of that will pass. But the spiritual quality, there is no passing. There is only presence that is always here. So if you find something that is permanent, love, for example, the ability to be conscious and to watch, then you can be sure you're sitting in the right place. So with anything spiritual, there is no coming, no going, no creating of it. You are just waking up to its presence. If you're in the physical world, you'll watch whatever you're seeing pass by. To listen to those words, you will watch whatever there is pass by. The act of watching is a non-physical quality that is always present. Now, Mirabai, again, perhaps a longer answer which detoured like a windy river heading towards the ocean. I trust that answers Amanda's question sufficiently.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Is there another question?
Anybody have a question? I know Yvonne, might have one.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I was wondering, do we have free will in relation to our spiritual evolution? Was it already preordained that we would be aware that we're on a spiritual path in this lifetime?
Right. I suppose your question then comes back to when does the spiritual path exist and are you in control of it? Now, a spiritual path exists or starts long before the individual is conscious of its beginning. So you may start in this life just reading a simple book, and of course that may be a religious book or not, and that may within you sow a seed which starts. And it could be later in that life, maybe years, that then one goes back to that book and reads again, or the lessons given in the book become applicable later. Now, I will assure you that as not just I, but others have given instruction or guidance to people, it may be many months that they put that practice into place and then they understand it. Circumstances have to be right. So the spiritual path may begin long before one is aware of it. And that may be months and years and will evolve very slowly, particularly in the beginning. As one is resistant of a spiritual life, not knowing what is truly going on, what is happening, And therefore then one may begin the process of awakening that can take quite some time. As one gets more practice in this spiritual life, then the opening starts to work easier. One follows the spiritual path easier. One gets accustomed to the word meditation, the word spirit, the word soul, and it becomes accepted within the language. And once it's accepted, then people can start to follow it. So it's like a child being born into a family that is spiritual. The language that is used is just everyday language to them. But a non-spiritual family, then that language sounds very alien, and they may reject it. But you see, in line with my first question, the process is slow in the awakening of where one looks, how one looks, why one looks to the inner world. The process becomes quite slow to begin with because there's lots of doubt and lots of insecurity. So this is why the vast majority of people do not consider themselves to be on a spiritual path. But somewhere within their human life, a little process will begin, and somewhere later in that life they will begin to follow it. And as I said, that may be many years or many lifetimes. Now, let us put this question in line with the first one. So one begins the work, one starts to walk towards the inner world, and then starts to practice the inner world, and then starts to open to what is already present to them. The work then picks up its speed in this early part of the spiritual development. And then it comes to a point that one seems to plateau. There is no improvement, no big steps being made, no sudden awakenings that may have happened at some stage in their spiritual life. And the awakenings begin when they begin again, but are of a substantial nature. And the steps appear to be quite a lot bigger than perhaps they would have been before. So it's very slow, then picks up speed, and then seems to plateau, and then little sparks of knowledge or interest occur. That is the way it works from the physical perspective. From the spiritual perspective, then one is watching and witnessing the awakening of a physical person very slowly. And one spirit would, let us say, sow a seed or light a candle within the being and know that it's not going to flourish for some time. So this is the way that spiritual life may begin without your recognition, but over a period of time. Let us answer the free will component of your question. From a physical perspective, you seem to decide for yourself that you will be here and then you will go there. So you may be in your home and then you may be in, let us say, on vacation or holiday in some other place. And the way it looks from your physical world is you made a decision and then consciously went about the action of that decision, and then you followed the action of travelling to this new location. And that's the way the physical world represents the life being lived. But as you become more aware of your spiritual life, there is more peace more calm, more presence, and more recognition of your own inner conscious world. And you start to watch the way life starts to unfold. And if you watch it from the correct perspective, you'll start to see that the inner world of man is starting to be reflected in the physical world of man, and you start to sit in the glory of let us say the peace and the love that is available in the spiritual life, and you witness and realize that is permanent and unchanging and never moving, and therefore it is just witnessing and watching a life that is unfolding. So as you watch, then you see, let us say, the human travelling from one location to another. So then from that perspective, the human is just a play of life that's bubbling along, and you yourself are just the witness to it. So if you are very much caught in the human world, you think you are doing the dishes, you are cleaning the house, you are going to work, you are driving the car. But from the spiritual perspective, which is the truth of you, you are just watching what appears to be a very two-dimensional life being lived on the screen of the mind. And there is no free will for that individual at all. It is just purely random events, one after another after another. So the answer to your question then is, who is it that's asking the question? Is it the human asking the question? In which case there is lots of free will, and you'll decide where you go and what you eat. From one who's more evolved spiritually, it's not so clear. And things seem to happen quite randomly, and events seem to happen with much synchronicity and validation, and quite sporadically. And then one goes further into the spiritual life, and there is just the watching. So it's like with coincidences. Let us say you go to the shop, you feel like you should go to a particular shop, and by chance when you get there you meet an old friend that you haven't seen before, and let's exaggerate this, perhaps the friend then gives you a job opportunity that you've always dreamed of. And the human world will say, what a coincidence that is, what a strange set of events. But from a spiritual world perspective, stand back and stand back a little further with this viewpoint. Well, it's just the way things were meant to be. Nothing strange about it at all. It was, that opportunity was placed there for it to occur. And it was planned long before one ever thought of going to the shop. So where is the free will then? If you look at it from that perspective, then something's in control of that human's point of life, point of view, the way the life they're living, and they had this inclination to go to the shop, and whoever the other friend was also had the inclination, and both had the inclination at the same time, and they had to arrive at the same time, and then other situations also had to take place. That wonderful job opportunity had to be available right at that moment, in which case the availability of that strange job must have really began months before, and it must have accumulated to such a degree that it was available exactly the right moment for exactly the right person. So, just for this event to take place, that process must have begun many months prior. So where's the free will then? So the free will question, or answer to the question, is both. There is free will, there is not free will. It depends where you're looking from. If you're in the human, you seem to be in control. If you're in the spiritual, it's just a play that is planned and destined and will work out exactly the correct way. So, the fact that you ask the question determines where you sit. And the ability to answer the question determines where the answerer sits. I hope that explains Yvonne. Explains your answer, your question, Yvonne, well.
Thank you so much. That's increased my understanding. Thank you.
I'm glad it has. So Mirabai, let us go to the healing list if we can, and then we'll move on to a further question afterwards.
Yes. Brian, Sue S., Jean and Robert Dermott, Carrie, Evie Rose, Tim, Jasmine, Sarah William, George, Ben, Jane, Lorna, Harriet, Sam, Eric, Stephen and Matthew, Mirabai, Anna Maria, Louise, Joy, Andrea, Don, Craig, Harini, Colin, Link, Isla, Mary and Geraldine, Cotty, Karen, Helene, Amanda, Menachem, Mika, Owen, Kimberly, Gary, David, Leah, Marshall, Hillary, Simone, Deb Slow, Abby, Lucy, Ava, Levi, Elizabeth, Joyce, Jim, Barb M., Barb H., Dan, Lulu, Deb, Jesse, Jean, Jeannie, and Jim, Janet and Bill, Phoebe and family, Leah, Nicole, Jody and Noah, Alex, Amanda, Ross, Karen, Aiden, Abby, Lily, Eric, Cecil, Rob, Susie, Rydell, Sharon, Philip, Kay, Paul, Vicky, Jenny, Brenda, Bob, Kath, David, Rachel and Josephine, Audrey, Irv, Jacob, Patsy, Deborah, Amrita, Sushana, Chris, Lisa, Sylvia, Maria, Nikki, Joanne, Stephanie Rhymes, Eduardo, Claudio, Linda, Karen, Joe, Karen, Reg, Alan, Daniel, Ron, Ollie and Caroline, Anne, Christine, Devin, Jamie, John, Linda, Julio, Lauren, Kathleen, Ricky, Jet, Michaela, Kitty, Jeanette, Carrie Ann, the Bettsworths, the Spains, and Lowe families, Angela's family and Chris Bright's family, Rebecca's family, Flo, Robin, Brenda, Avril, Maya, Steve, Dave, Mick, Irene, Sue, Pat, Raina, Simon, Val, Jane and family, Fabio, Marie, and Jeff. And may all be happy. Thank you.
Well, quite a list of names. So, Mirabai, do we have a further question?
Yes, Amrita, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Hello, Ignatius.
Amrita. Well, good evening to you.
Good evening to you. My question involves the altar of fire, where two are sitting side by side. Would you please speak of the fire itself as a dynamic energy, both as an expression or need of the sitters and as an independent third energy? Thank you.
Yes. Well, the triad is often mentioned in many spiritual texts and also many religious texts, that there is a one and another and what they create together. So, if you like, you could say there is the spirit and the human that is creating the life that is being lived. In another circle, they will say it is the father and the mother creating the child. And the child is the lived experience. In spiritual terms, this is perhaps the nearest analogy. The father of spirit meets the mother nature of the physical world, and together they create the proverbial son that lives the life. In individuals' aspects, it is no different, because two people come together. They come together in a partnership, and when that partnership is working well, they create and live another possibility, where you have two individuals that seem to become one. They start to live in very similar ways and act and think in similar ways. And they live what is called a relationship, and that relationship seems to have its own identity. The two individuals are still individuals, but there is a middle ground, like two circles overlapping, and that overlapping part is what we are calling the relationship. Now, this is where they create together. They create a life which is the together life. They can live an independent life, but they create a life which is together. And that togetherness, they may decide that they do this, do that, live here, live there. They may also create then, of course, potential for children or potential for other expressions of themselves which comes out of this creation. The fire in this example was not meant to be a fire of destruction, but a fire of creation. And the creation burns away what is not required to reveal something that is. And that something is maybe, for example, a child or even a project or a way of living. Now, if one is too disconnected from one's partner, then that act of creation, the act of togetherness, feels very separate. And there is a hole between two people where one's constantly looking left and the other is constantly looking right, for example. And that means the act of creating becomes a lot harder between the two people. But if one turns towards the other and the other towards them, then the ability to work together means they can work for a common goal of what is then good for, let us say, for the children, or good for life, or good for their life. And here the risk then is one falls into the fire themselves and sees that my life is no better than my children's life, and I live through my children, and they lose a sense of their individuality then, the parent. And when the child then leaves home, of course, then the parent thinks, well, what do I do now? So one must come close together, be together, live together, work together, but still hold a sense of oneself. And that way you can have two individuals and then a created life in between the individual. So one's true way is to see the sense of being an individual person, but to worship the common ground, the fire that is in between the two. Of course, that fire can be passion, the fire can be creation, the fire can be an evolution of burning away past dead branches of one's individual life. So the fire can work in many ways. So if two individuals come together and they can recognize that between the two of them is this thing called relationship, then the honouring of that relationship is where they meet their commonality. Now that can be that the two people then find that we are two separate people, that you like, let us say, one style of living, I like another style of living, and yet together we can work together to be whatever that commonness is. Now, it is in that common ground, in that fire of existence, one, if at the appropriate time you surrender everything into that common ground, without losing a sense of self. And that sounds contradictory, but there are times where you can surrender everything and you can be so merged together for a period of time. And this could be a period of time of maybe an hour, maybe minutes, possibly a lot longer. That the two parts of the flame dance together, and this is how the feelings of twin flames become a phrase that we could use. At this appropriate time, if one is so evolved together, the loss of self can be a finding of the unity. So again, in some traditions, one may practice some type of tantra work, and tantra is finding what is common between what is two individuals, finding what is unified between two separate people. And therefore there can be the bliss of togetherness, that one gets wrapped up into each other, and not to do no more than to find what is unified, what is the common ground. So in other spiritual work, one may surrender oneself and lose oneself. In this case, the losing of oneself is not into the other person, but into the relationship where the other person also resides. Now this is the act of total surrender, and it can give bliss or ecstasy that one finds in the loss of everything physical. You see, one is giving the other a safe ground to let go. And that safe ground is the relationship itself. And in that safe ground, one may find ecstasy or bliss. It is the safety means that one can travel through this hole in the veil, and one loses the sense of the physical and reveals what is not physical. And in our story we said that is ecstasy or bliss. In this demonstration, you could say it's almost happening as you speak now, as you listen now, as the medium speaks. And that is, he provided a hole in the veil. And in this case, there is a flow of knowledge that you are associating against a personality and a name that you use against myself, against my personality that's there. So there is a loss of self that reveals something that is beyond the self. And in this case, that is knowledge. In other cases, it may be love or bliss or ecstasy. And of course, it can also be the peace beyond all understanding. Now, if one wants to practice this fire, one must find the appropriate personal place that one feels comfortable with, the safe ground, where one can allow openness and not feel judged or criticized, and then one practices letting go. It is like letting go of one's ego, one then finds the truth of oneself beyond the ego. It is letting go of the thought of doing, one reveals the true sense of one's being that is beyond all doing. But in order to do that, you must feel safe and comfortable and also know what to do and where to look. So this is part of the process, and I gave the process in 18 different talks, and this question was reflected in one talk where we had the altar of fire not so long ago. But the process begins right at the very beginning, which was looking at spiritual bypassing and saying, don't look at the exterior world, look at the interior world. Don't use the excuse or the words of being spiritual, look inside you. And of course, the looking inside reveals another layer and another layer and another layer. Now, the series of 18 talks are all occurring all at the same time within all individuals. One may think you are on, let us say, level 10, but really you could be on all the levels at all the time. And you may zigzag through your awareness of where you are in your process. So if you want to experience this altar of fire, the feeling of bliss, togetherness, of union, then one needs the right circumstances, and the circumstances where one can let go and move forward. I gave this in another talk in another way, and that was when one moves beyond the mind into the heart, but one is called beyond the limited human heart into something more major, a bigger experience, let's say, of total bliss. And if one's just about to take that step, one thinks, I must take some money with me just in case I need it, or I'll take some knowledge with me in case I need that, or something. And then they don't fully let go. One must let go of the safety net of, let us say, carrying a little bit of knowledge or a little bit of experience or a little bit of the physical world into this purity of it, this experience. And that's how the phrase, one must walk to God naked, means. You let go of your past, your beliefs, your attachments and your desires, and you let go of them all, that is the nakedness, and then you walk towards God or walk towards Spirit. This is also a description of the hole in the veil. One lets go of everything and does not want to try to control either the hole, the veil, or what comes through the veil. One just allows it. So the fire then means one must find the ability to surrender to what is laid before them. And you can't do that if you're fearful about your relationship or your friendship, or you're fearful about your connection to your spiritual world. You won't have the full experience. So the word surrender is not necessarily a word I particularly like, but it's applicable. One just lets go. And you let go by stop holding on. It sounds very subtle in its difference. It is the same with one's relationship with another. When the time is right, you let go of yourself. And you surrender, but you don't lose yourself. You gain something far bigger. So the process becomes very revealing. And if you saw this fire, let's say from a physical perspective, you saw the fire of bliss, of ecstasy, and you saw it, and perhaps it has a nice little label on the side saying, this is the fire of bliss and ecstasy. Would you walk into it or not? Now, of course, you can imagine from the human perspective, you would say, very nice, thank you, but not today. Looks rather hot, I think. I will come out quite badly burned. But if you were willing to walk to that fire, what is being burnt away is all the aspects you are not, that you do not need. This gives the nakedness on the other side. So can you be truly naked, if you like, with your partner, your companions? And I don't mean naked in a physical sense, but this takes spiritual progress, doesn't it, as you can imagine? So the fire is what two people create, both for the creation of life, but also for the burning away of what they are not. And that fire may be honoured just in brief moments, or may be lived through in the physical world. Amrita, are you following my language? And perhaps you have another question related to this.
Oh, yes, I am following it. That was perfect. Thank you. And what if the other sitter is spirit or a spirit guide?
Yes. Well, again, depends on which viewpoint you have. From the physical side, it looks quite alien, desirable, but at the same time, what does that mean? Am I capable? Am I worthy? From the spiritual side, they're just saying, just get in. What are you worried about? Just allow the flow. Now, if you are thinking in terms of, let us say, mediumship, well, the true flow of any mediumship message is when you allow spirit to say the words and to give the evidence, the validation. If one tries to think about it, then this is when the difficulty or the stop-start will start to become visible. So, are you letting yourself or allowing yourself surrender to your spiritualness, or to your guide, or to the loved one on the other side? So mediumship then becomes as hard as you make it. And if you want to make it difficult, well, then expect it to be difficult. You are then seeing mediumship as a reflection of your inside. It's got to be difficult, therefore it is difficult. If you relax into it, then, well, where's the judgment? You just flow. And this is the flow through the hole in the veil that one must allow. And the allowance must mean that there is what's on the other side comes through to this side. Poor words, but that's a clear explanation.
Thank you so much.
Can you
Yes.
relate to that, Amrita?
Yes, I can. Thank you so very much. Beautiful.
My
Beautiful.
pleasure. My pleasure. Back to Mirabai. Mirabai, do we have time for one more question?
Actually, we've reached time.
We have reached time. Is that what you say?
Yes.
Do you
Yeah.
have other questions waiting?
There is one.
Let us briefly tackle that one.
Okay. Mary asks, well, first she says, Ignatius, thank you for your answers so far. My question was answered partly. I believe in them because I have an experience last week that felt disempowering to me. However, I realize it was most likely from my thoughts within me that showed up in the physical. It feels as though the last decade of my life's path has been greatly challenged. So, my question is similar. Since spirit is always here, would that mean spirit had me experience it to lead me into a new direction?
And you said it was Mary that asked the question. I think I heard. Was that correct?
Yes,
Mary,
correct.
well, first of all, Mary, if you would like a more detailed answer, perhaps we can have some time together. You were due to have some time a few months ago, but it was never arranged. Now, let me briefly answer the question. All experiences that one has, let us say as simple as one forgetting to tie one's shoelaces, or let us say a life-changing incident, from something small to something major, every experience is an opportunity for you to see the clarity of life. Now, from tying one's shoelaces, one then can put focus and one can fall into a blissful state. Or one can not tie one's shoelaces, one can trip over, for example, and as a result of that, a whole string of experiences can take place as well. You see, it is not what occurs, it's where you view it from that becomes important. Where you view it from is the way you see life. Now, going back to Mary's specific example, if you remember, my dear, you were asked or told that you would have an experience that would be important to you, that would come about subsequent to the reason for you to be in this other environment. Please go back to your messages and you will see it. Now, everything is an opportunity for clarity. If you imagine, and I'm going to use this phrase in relation to Mary, it's in relation to others, and it's not specifically just for her. But rather than, let us say, looking at an event where it did not go so well and being critical of it, one didn't just accept that and say, well, Spirit knew what they were doing, or it's a spiritual life, it's meant to be what I experienced, or that was my karma. But what you did, you looked inwards. So you went from, let us say, a potential to bypass and not look inward. But you did look inwards. And the looking inwards gave you as within, so without answer. So that answer then means you saw the truth of the creation of that experience. You created it for yourself many, many times over, you said, a decade. I would suggest longer, but let us work with that decade. You've created this many, many times. And something has to happen where one day you say, I get it. I see it. And let us go back to Yvonne's question, about which I shuffled to suit myself to say, well, a spiritual life begins earlier than what you think. Well, you had these experiences for a decade. All of them pointing to this realization which had to take place at exactly the right time, which was, as you're saying, last week. Now, for you, Mary, you've had many different circumstances occur to you over the last, well, let's say 3 years or so, which have all pointed to this. And if or when you come to talk to me and I give you the example, I'm going to point to a simple question or request you had a number of years ago, which then was given by you, accepted by us, and we gave you a chain of events for this process. So what's that question then? Was the incident that led to that question designed, or was it coincidence? Or was it a disaster? Or was it an act of love? When you understand the chain of events, perhaps you may see it in a very different way. So the short answer to your question is yes, of course, you're right. But you had to be ready for it. To leave it with love and send them love, because they played an important part in your task. And I'm going to, if you come for your connection, I'm going to highlight to you other people that have played an important part. I hope that answers succinct enough and fills our remaining time. So, Mirabai, back to you one more time. Are there other questions waiting, or have we concluded?
I believe we've concluded. There's no more questions. And Mary says, thank you, Ignatius. Yes, it did.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, then this will conclude our series of talks that we have given. And we're going to begin a new series starting next week. As this time we have looked at the way one evolves spiritually from a simple process of let's start by looking inwards to an unbroken circle where that expression then is outwards. We're going to look at the way the soul goes through its seasons of understanding. You'll have time in your life where your soul will be in a process of letting go. Time where you feel your soul or your life is dormant and still. And of course, times when you are creating and reaping your harvest. So we're going to relate the seasons of the soul to the seasons of the year and give a series of talks between each of those 4 seasons to explain to you a part of your life needs to be letting go for a period, and part of your life needs to be reaping a harvest, or you feel very dormant and flat in your expression. That series will come starting next week. The seasons of the soul. I trust my answers have been clear for you all, and I hope they have given you some sense of yourself and some sense of what is beyond your physical self, and how you should evolve and arrive there. I wish you well on your journey. So as the words disappear from the page of this book, what remains is the page itself. And you may create from there. God bless you all.
God bless you, Ignatius. God bless everyone.